Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk. Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whatever time you have decided to tune in with us. We would like to welcome you to another episode of Victory at the Table Talk, where we have down-to-earth conversations about various topics to assist with your walk with Christ. Here at the table, you can get the victory, but you can also get a taste of Victory Apostolic Church right here in Matteson, Illinois, where we are building victorious Christ-like lives. Enjoy this episode.
Praise the Lord, and welcome to another Victory Health and Wellness podcast on today. Today our subject is breast cancer awareness and survival. We will be discussing an educational portion, and I have two special guests here with me today that will be sharing their journey and their survival with breast cancer. I do need to do a disclaimer for this discussion today. As always, when we do an educational podcast, it is for informational purposes only. If you experience any symptoms that we discuss, please see your clinician. And if there is an emergency, please dial 911. In addition, this is for mature audiences. I would say someone 13 and older. Under that, we're going to be very open, and unfortunately, they may not understand. So if you have a child over 13, they are able to look at this podcast. You may want to sit with them, especially our females, the girls, so they can understand what this is about. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce our two guests on the panel today. We'll start with Mrs. Brenda Crosby-Averhart.
Yes.
Praise the Lord. Brenda is a member of Victory.
Absolutely.
She has been here how many years, Brenda?
Almost 7 or 8.
7 to 8 years. Great.
Yes.
And I wound up getting her on board with this discussion. She'll talk a little bit more about herself in the broadcast. But Brenda was recommended to me through Vanessa.
Yes.
And I'm really grateful for that. So you'll really be very, very beneficial to this conversation. So I'm glad to have you here today. In addition, Miss Cynthia Reynolds. Cynthia and I work together on several projects here at Victory. She's been here almost the same amount of time. You've been here 5 years?
5 years.
I've been here 6.5. So we're going to get started. I am so excited about talking about this. As with any subject, you guys don't know, but I get emotional when I go through research and learning about these subjects. Some of them I know about, some of them I don't know as much, but it really, really kind of gets to me because we have so many deaths occurring from disease and disorders and chronic disease and disorders. So I'm going to talk about breast cancer. The Centers for Disease and Prevention Control statistics rank breast cancer as the number one underneath heart disease is second for all women in the United States. And for our non-Hispanics, and just so you know, I said this on last podcast with the men for prostate cancer, we're now called non-Hispanic blacks, if you notice when you fill out things, and they're called non-Hispanic whites. So it's not just we're African Americans anymore. So, but Hispanic women, they rank very closely for the number of cases they have for both cancer and heart disease. So they're kind of neck to neck, but we aren't. The American Cancer Society estimates 270,000 women will die from cancer this year, and that is for the entire United States. Now, although it is rare, men can get breast cancer. About 1 out of every 100 men may experience breast cancer, and they are diagnosed in the United States. But Black men that experience breast cancer, they are typically have a lower chance of recovery. That happens a lot with African Americans when it comes to cancer. Both men and women may experience advanced forms of cancer, which is called metastatic breast cancer. The survival rate for women and men with metastatic breast cancer is 27% versus 25%, and that's where the gap really closes in. While Black women and white women get breast cancer at about the same rate, Black women are 40% more likely to die as a result of the disease, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, this is a mind-blowing opening fact. that shows disparities that exist within the breast health industry. There's a doctor named Dr. Vivian Bia, and she is a section chief of breast surgical oncology at New York Presbyterian Hospital. And she looked at this and said that we can't pin exactly why this exists, but she is doing currently some research to try to identify and make things better. And looking at specifically, she's looking at the genetics and tumor biology that exists in the African American versus our counterparts. So in 2018, these are the stats for 2018, but Brenda's going to come and give us some current stats for Illinois when it comes to breast cancer. It was estimated that about 627,000 women died due to breast cancer. In the state of Illinois alone, in 2018, there were incidents of 133 women per 100,000 new cases of breast cancer among all ethnicities, which equated to about 10,005 new cases. That's a lot. As we listen to these stats, it just makes you aware that this is a really serious illness, and that through discussion and education and becoming more aware of it, we'll get better. So I'm going to let Brenda share some of the more current stats that exist for Illinois.
I wanted to also add, when you spoke of the disparity, there was a great disparity at Illinois and Chicago, where you had at least 116% of black women dying in comparison to our counterpart. And what happened is the Sinai Medical Group, they did research, and they came together and they did a summit to find out that, our death rate was much higher than even the United States death rate for breast cancer, and even New York. So they went about doing different things to address it. And this organization is called the Metropolitan Task Force.
Okay.
And they, they're doing so many different things regarding that, regarding the quality of the mammographer, and the type of transportation that we have, because a lot of times the difference is because we are unable to get to places and where things are not accessible for us. And, they talk about us living in a desert because we're not in an area which is close to a university or a medical center like our counterparts. And then simply you look at the socioeconomic factors, and that will also,
affect it.
let us know that that's a reason why we're unable to diet properly, or we're unable to get transportation because we can't afford it. So I just wanted to add
Thanks
that
for sharing
to it.
that.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you now share the stats for Illinois, current stats for Illinois when it comes to breast cancer?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have, to this day, for 2021, we have 74,980 women that have newly been diagnosed with breast cancer, and we have 23,070 women who have died this year
alone
from breast cancer. And we have, for men, if it's okay to give that, because they
Absolutely.
also,
Absolutely.
we have about 2,650 new cases of breast cancer in men, and we've so far had 530 men to die this year from breast cancer.
Wow.
And as I looked further, in Illinois, we have 1 in 833 men to be diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's based on a 100,000 rate.
Right.
Yeah.
100,000 rate. That's deep.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And we don't ever want to make it slight the men that get breast cancer, because it does happen to men as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes it's actually the same reason why it happens to women.
Yes.
It's just that they don't get it at the same rate that we get it.
Yes.
It is much less, it's fewer men that get it. So thanks for sharing that. Yes. That's just deep. When I look over these stats, and it just really touches me. So let's talk about what breast cancer is. Just like with any other cancer, it's basically the same thing. The cells mutate. You have genes, and your genes mutate, and they start coming together. They form tumors, or you might get lumps. But and it grows uncontrollably. That's the problem. That's what makes it cancer. So if it's a regular cell in your body, and it's acting right, you won't get cancer. But if it's not acting right and it starts mutating, that's when you wind up getting cancer. And it's the most common form of cancer worldwide. It is breast cancer. That's at the top of the list. The lowest one I noticed was, believe it or not, was ovarian cancer. The lowest type of cancer for women. That was amazing to me. I thought it would be a little bit higher. It's also the second leading cause of cancer death among women after lung cancer. It is a chronic disease and can be isolated, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, or a more aggressive form, which we mentioned before, which is metastatic breast cancer. And it spreads to other areas of the body. Breast cancer develops in stages, and you know there's stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay. It's 4 stages. So there are causes of breast cancer. A couple of causes, risk factors. These are risk factors. Family history, hormonal changes, age, after age 40, but anyone can get breast cancer before 40. You can get breast cancer
absolutely.
before 40. You're just at a higher risk after 40. Personal history of breast cancer. Cancer in one breast increases your chance of getting it in the other breast. Some people get, it's called bilateral. If it's in both
2,
at the same
yes.
time, it's called bilateral. Other factors that affect it, environmental factors, just such as being overweight, being exposed to radiation. That's a big factor. Menarche is having periods at a younger age, or having menopause at an older age can put you at a higher risk. Pregnancy, becoming pregnant at an older age puts you at a higher risk. And this one, you can inherit. The last one I'm going to talk about is HRT, hormone replacement therapy. But this one, I always heard about the gene test that you can take to identify it. And it's called the BR, yes,
BRCA1 and BRCA2.
BRCA1 and 2. And
Yes.
that means breast cancer
And
gene.
ovarian.
Yes, and ovarian. And what happens is that it changes from, everyone has it, but sometimes it changes the structure, and that's what makes it you more susceptible. But if you have it, they look at that if it's a variant in there, and then you're at a higher risk. And some women, some famous women, I don't remember the names, they've taken the test and they've actually got mastectomies because they had this gene and it was identified and had broken off and it was a variant of it. You're at a high risk. Let's just do a mastectomy. That has happened. Coming to the hormone replacement therapy.
Yes, you got it.
The hormone replacement therapy, that puts you at a higher risk for getting breast cancer as well. And you can talk about your experience with that, please.
Well, I actually didn't know anything about cancer, period. I was just a wild child running around in my 30s. And what happened was my period became very irregular after I had my daughter. And when I went to the hospital, they gave me several tests. And the test revealed that I was in menopause. I was 32 years old at that time. And that, I don't know, I have to say, I know that it was God that was keeping me because I, did not get upset about that loss. I wouldn't say that it was my young age that kept me from falling apart, but I knew it was God that kept me.
Yes.
But what happened is they placed me on hormonal replacement therapy, and it came in the form of Provera and Premarin, 10 milligrams of Provera and 0.625 grams of Premarin. And so I started taking those pills when I was in my early 30s. And I'll never forget the doctor that I saw told me that I would be very sorry if I didn't take the pills. So it's very important that or you have a doctor that you can trust, because I believed and I trusted her, especially with her looking like me.
Right.
So that's what I did. And when you have, when you're taking hormonal therapy, there's a test that you have to take every month that make sure that you're not getting endometrium cancer. It's called endometrium biopsy. And it's one of the most painful biopsies or tests that I've ever had, because you don't get any anesthesia to quiet the pain. But that's something that has to be done when you're taking hormonal medication. Okay, and so what she did, and it gave me a fake period, but it ran like water. So it,
It wasn't natural.
it was not natural.
Right. So at that point, you were on. It's synthetic. It gave you a synthetic period. It was coming, but it wasn't a natural period.
It wasn't a real period.
And that started the journey, which we're going to get to where you had you evolved from that to breast cancer as a result
Right.
of having the hormone therapy.
And if I can say, she raised the dosage
That's right. You did say that in your book.
that I took from 0.625 to 0.9.
Yeah.
And me taking it for such a long period of time, it had caused me complications. I mean, I experienced it like a birth control pill where
Yes.
it, affected the size of your breasts and your skin and, all the things that, man would think hormones are supposed to do.
Yeah. So this is a good example of how medicine, even though its intention is to take care of you and fix a thing, in this case, it actually caused a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And it happens with other women as well, and that's why it's on this list for causes. So in your case, that was the cause. Direct cause for you was the HRT, that medication.
And it was really ironic because I was doing an event and the doctor that I had known for years, he was apologizing for what his comrade had done.
Yeah.
And,
But it was too late then. You had to deal with it.
Yeah.
But you dealt with it. We're going to get back to that.
Yeah.
So can I go to
sure.
Cynthia? Cynthia, for you, how long ago were you diagnosed with breast cancer and at what age?
I was diagnosed with breast cancer in November of 2015.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know anything about breast cancer either. What happened was it was through an annual mammogram that they found out that something was wrong. It was like a mass on my breast. So my PCP, my primary care physician, recommended that I see an oncologist. So doing the test, they did a needle biopsy.
Okay.
And that's when they found out that I had stage 1 cancer.
I see.
So that's when they had to go in and do the surgery. I did have some complications from the surgery because I had 3 surgeries I had 2 surgeries after the first one. So I had 3 surgeries altogether. And that was because I kept getting an infection. So that scared me. I thought I was going to die. I'm like, okay, God. I know I'm going to die from this. Because, who gets 3 surgeries from something that was supposed to be so small?
Yes.
And so it scared me at the hospital I was at. So I was transferred to another hospital.
Right.
And I've been there since. But the main thing that I thought about, and I thought what God said to me was, this is not a sin unto death.
Right.
You will live and not die.
Amen.
And I will always remember that the rest of my life.
Yes. And that's important when you're going through any challenge, whether it's cancer or any disease. Like I've dealt with the heart, but it's not diseased heart, it's the heart issues I have with my heart. So with that being said, we both know that you didn't know anything about breast cancer before you had it. Right?
Absolutely.
Nothing. And that's what happens to most of us. And that's why these podcasts are important. That's why we do community outreach to try to educate women. So the symptoms, you never had any symptoms.
No symptoms.
Did you have any symptoms?
I did. What happened
For the
was,
cancer?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I'm speaking of.
Okay.
I had like a lump
In your breast?
on my breast.
Just one side?
my right side.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I thought it was a pimple.
Okay.
And I didn't do anything about it. And about maybe a month and a half or 2, it began to get sore. And that's when
So I want you all to listen to what's being said with these 2 beautiful ladies here, because the symptoms differ with with different people, but these are some of the ways you will be identified either through a mammogram. The other thing I want to emphasize is self-exams. We'll talk about that later, but I do want to say self-exams are very important. I don't do them. I hate to say it, but I don't. But we should be doing self-exams because sometimes you can identify a lump under your arm or in your breast with a self-exam. So good that you two were early enough and you were early enough. And that's a blessing.
Amen.
Yeah. So the symptoms that you experience, some of the symptoms, I want to go through both of your symptoms. We know yours was a lump. We know yours was the mammogram. So you really didn't have any symptoms.
I didn't have any
Nothing.
symptoms. Nothing.
Some of the symptoms, a breast lump formed, dimpling or irritation in the breast. The breast can dimple. You know, sorry, this is so personal. Drew just looking at me.
Ahead.
I don't even want to say it in front of him. But the nipple can dimple. You know, it's just not like it should be. It starts going inward instead of being outward as well. You can have pain, which you mentioned you had some pain. You can get a discharge, and that's what my sister had. She had discharge. And I remember her telling me that. I said, sis, you need to go to the doctor. That is not normal. I didn't know a lot about breast cancer. I didn't know that was one of the symptoms, but I knew it wasn't normal. Yes. You don't get discharge. You're not breastfeeding. You shouldn't have a discharge. Swelling or thickening of a part of the breast, change in the size of the breast, redness or flaky skin. We don't generally see red skin on us, so that's not something we would be. Inversion or pulling in of the nipple, which I just stated. So let's talk about when you were diagnosed with it. At that point, what happened? What was the treatment plan that the doctor recommended for you, starting with you, Cynthia?
The treatment plan for me was radiation treatment. Okay. I did not have to have chemo. Okay. So I thank God for that. I had radiation for about 6 weeks. And the doctor said it's usually 5 to 7 weeks. But I had it for 6 weeks. And I was still working at the time. So I would have the radiation treatment and then go to work. Well, it made me tired. Yes. So I was at work tired and trying to work. But thank God, he got me through it. I still did it.
Right.
But I was very tired. Okay. And about a year later, I don't even think it was a year, I had to retire because I wasn't at my full potential. I couldn't do the work anymore.
Okay. And your job was very demanding.
Yes, yes.
Very demanding.
Administrator to a judicial assistant. That was my title, judicial assistant. So I was administrator to a judge.
And then for you, Brenda, what was your treatment plan?
Well, if I can say, when I went to my primary and I told him, I said, it's probably nothing. And he told me that you and I both know it's something. So it's very important to always have a primary doctor that you can trust and one that can, direct you and advise you. So he sent me to get a mammogram. And once I got that, it was positive. It wasn't a normal mammogram. Okay. So after that, I was sent for an ultrasound. Yes. Okay. Now, and that's why I get into the disparity or the quality of people and the procedures that they do. Right. Because the ultrasoundologist, he said that he couldn't make a determination of what he saw. Okay, so my primary says, well, we know something's there, so he sent me straight to a surgeon.
Okay, to the surgeon.
To a surgeon.
Okay, and to do a biopsy?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
And
all right.
After the biopsy, and I was just that silly. I was so silly because I had just got married a year ago, and I should have known that when someone wants you to come into their office to talk to you,
there's something wrong.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I was like, oh.
Absolutely.
So after the biopsy, when I went in, he told me that it was cancer.
That was hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, my tears just automatically ran.
That's hard.
And I didn't know what to feel. It just shocked me. And my new husband ran to one side, and my doctor ran to the other side, holding my hand, which I thank God. And he said that my cancer was very aggressive and that we would need to be as aggressive
With your
as this
treatment.
cancer.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to just talk about the ways they identify cancer, which you just mentioned. You mentioned was through mammograms, self-exams. They can examine you in the office. They do ultrasound after the mammogram. You don't do an ultrasound first, and then they can do a biopsy. So those are the ways they identify if you have the cancer and you're survivors. But let's say something starts happening which you're not feeling good or whatever. They may do a PET scan to look further, but that's that full body scan to see if they can identify cancer in your body that has metastasized at that point. So your treatment plan for you was what?
I had surgery.
What was your surgery for?
To remove the lump. I had
Okay.
a lumpectomy.
A
When you get a
lumpectomy,
lumpectomy,
okay.
it's only moving a portion
Right.
in comparison to a myomectomy.
Okay.
So I got that, and I had 9 months of chemotherapy, and I also had radiation.
Okay. Now you were stage 1.
Yes.
You were stage 1, and you had just the radiation for the
Yes.
6 weeks.
The radiation, but I had I underwent right lumpectomy and lymph nodes.
Oh, so
Oh,
you
yeah.
had.
So I had,
had
both,
that
too.
yes.
Oh, so you did have to have surgery. They removed the lump
I
and they
did.
removed lymph
Yeah.
nodes on what side? The same side as the breast?
Yes, the right side.
Okay. Okay.
And then afterward, for the treatment part of it, I had to take an astrol, I believe is the name of it. After.
Okay. Are you still on that?
No, praise God, I just got off about
She
2
did
months
tell
ago.
me that.
Praise
Yeah, I didn't
God.
even know she was still
Praise
taking
God.
medication for
Yes.
that. So they do this number thing with the five years. What is the significance in the 5 years? Can you all share that with me?
I think it is because what happened, they put a port inside of me to give me my chemo.
Right.
But I think it measures your progress or your livelihood, your
Survival rate?
yeah, I'm
5
sorry.
years, the survival rate.
Right.
Okay, because
But-
I was just curious about the 5 years. If you survive 5 years after the onset of cancer, you probably will survive. And that's probably what they're saying. So that's good. Thanks for sharing that. Now, the other piece I want to talk about is, I know you talked about how long it took you to get medical attention. It took you a month because it started growing, so you went. You didn't never seek medical attention because you didn't know you had it,
know
but
I
you
had
did go get your mammogram. I want to stress to everyone, please get your mammograms. I, in particular, do not like taking mammograms. I don't.
Oh, they are so uncomfortable.
Because they squash you. And that is so uncomfortable. But in the long run, it's a blessing, it's a benefit. Now, the other thing that I do know, they do have mammography now that is 3D. I don't know what that means. Does it mean you stand in front of this thing that goes around you and it just takes the image that way? I have never been in a 3D mammogram. But I do know that's probably less invasive as far as touching you and, and doing all the squashing of your breast. So I'll find out more about that later. But just so you know, ladies, doesn't matter how it feels, you need to get your mammogram done every single year, every year. I don't care how old you are. My aunt is 80-something years old. She just got cancer 2 years ago. And she said, I never thought I would ever have cancer, ever. So make sure you do that. The other part, managing breast cancer. Now, you have the breast cancer. You can do your appointments. Part of what helps with anything, any disease, it doesn't matter what I've learned across the board. It doesn't matter if it's cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. It does not matter. It all requires the same management, meaning you need to eat well, okay? You need to exercise. You need to get your rest, okay? I would recommend that you also don't be afraid to ask for help. A lot of times when we get sick, we don't want to ask anybody, can you please come over and help me with this? We don't want to do that. And I think it's pride. We don't want anybody to see that we're weak at that particular point. But I'm going to tell you something. Somebody coming in that house to support you will make you feel good. Other thing that you talked about in your book, and I'm going to talk about this book in a moment, you talk about joining a support group. We'll talk about that in a second, which is very good. And we as African Americans don't like support groups. We do not like support groups. And I'm telling you, you need to talk to someone. Cancer is no joke. I don't care what kind of cancer it is. it is serious business. So go to a support group, join one, and you can find a good one. You always keep saying a good one, trust, you need to have a good one. So don't be afraid to ask for help or seek counseling. Sometimes you get depressed when you find out you have a disease. When I first found I had to have a pacemaker, I was like, I need a support group. They didn't have any, none. The only thing you could find is something online. I wasn't about to get an online support group. So, and that was back in 1992. So I'm going to say support groups can work for you. I think you need to look into it or counseling. The last part I'm going to talk about is prevention of breast cancer. Can you prevent cancer? A lot of times you can't. A lot of times you can't. You can't prevent it because of the family history. If there's a family history of cancer, I have 2 sisters that have had different cancers. I've never had cancer. I don't take that for granted. We can't take it for granted, but anyone is susceptible to getting cancer is what I want to say. So when it comes to prevention, to get your mammograms, breast exams, and basically it says 40% of diagnosed breast cancer women is detected because they felt a lump and they had an exam, which is in your case a regular exam. That's 40% of people are detected that way. The rest of them probably in a later stage because they didn't know they had it, and sometimes you don't have the symptoms. So that's an issue. So what I want you to do now, Miss Brenda, answer these questions. What lifestyle changes did you make?
Well, I started juicing. I started because over where I was in a support group at Apostolic, we call ourselves Class of 2000, and because we were all diagnosed, and we would have people come and talk about food and different things once
nutrition.
a month, and they said that it would be better to eat, like meats from the wild because it hasn't been processed, it hasn't nothing has been added to it that could adversely affect your body. So I took information that was presented and I applied it.
Okay.
And somewhere in my head, I realized that juicing or drinking a lot of water was really good.
Yes.
And I found out a lot of that from the support group.
Yeah.
And also, I was one of those that got on to a cyber support group where they talked about green tea and drinking water, and I, started drinking as much water as I possibly could.
Yes.
And I exercised, and I guess I was one that didn't mind going to work. So like my sister here, and I worked, and I think the way I looked at things was totally different because I didn't look at myself as being sick.
Right.
I didn't even look at myself as being a survivor. I looked at myself as being a thriver that God had allowed to live.
And
so
that's what I wanted to bring in right quick is talk about that, and then we're going to just briefly talk about your book, and then we're going to be wrapping it up. But I want to talk about the role that spirituality plays whenever you go through any challenge such as this breast cancer. I think it's important that, as I've had to do with what I had to deal with, even though it wasn't breast cancer, it was still very serious. We have to get close to God. We have to, not saying you just getting closer to God because you're sick, but that's your real support system.
Yes.
That's your real support system. And that's where you have to pray, fast, read the word, get involved in groups to help build you up, because it's all about the spirit man, and then as a physical man is ill and it's going through something. It doesn't mean it's going to fall apart this week. It's not all sickness is not unto death, like you stated. So we have to remember that we have to align ourselves with God so that he can gird us up to deal with the chemo and to deal with the steps that you have to take care of yourself. Some people don't have family support. Some people don't. They don't have anyone. They don't have family support, so that's real important. Yeah. So what I want to cover right now is Miss Averhart, Mrs. Averhart.
Brenda.
She has written 2 books. One book is about her journey with breast cancer, and it's titled Journey Through Breast Cancer. The other book you wrote is in dedication to your mom and the journey that she took through Alzheimer's.
Yeah, she was diagnosed at 45.
And the name of that book was? is.
Yellow scarf, a bittersweet remembrance.
Yes. And just to let you all know, the journey through breast cancer, Brenda came up to the kiosk Sunday and she said, I'm looking for Evangelist Stephanie. I said, well, I'm her. I'm thinking she's buying a mask. She's like, no, I'm Brenda. She kept saying she was Brenda. I'm like, okay, so who's Brenda? You know, I deal with so many people. And then she said, I'm the one that's going to be on the podcast. Or something you said to me. She said, I want to leave you this book. She blessed me with this book, and I'm going to tell you something. You all need to read this book because I got through half of it. I'm going to finish it before the weekend. But it's so important to understand what breast cancer is about through education, which is what we're doing. Also from journeys. Yes. You two ladies have survived and made it through. My sister didn't. She had breast cancer for 7 years, and quite frankly, I don't remember what stage she started. I do know she had to have radiation and chemo. I thought it was stage 4, but it's hard to survive through stage 4 for 7 years. But hers metastasized. We didn't know what it was. We thought the doctor thought she had bronchitis and gave her that medicine you take for bronchitis. And I just wasn't feeling it. And I said, listen, if you keep coughing like this, you need to go to the emergency room. She went, and unfortunately, within 2 weeks, my sister was gone. It was very traumatic. And I will tell you this. When someone passes away from cancer, it's so sad. I'm going to cry in a minute. It is hard because everything you see in those movies, that's exactly what happens. That pain is terrible. And I'm just going to say this. Do your part. Keep your appointments. Keep your appointments. Your appointments are very important. If the doctor says, I want to see you, see the doctor. Don't say, oh, I'm okay, because that's not always the case. Your body is like racking and going through something and you don't even know it. Keep your appointments. So lastly, let's wrap this up. What last words can you share with us? Can you talk about the support group right quick? Because we have to wrap this up.
It was Apostolic. I was a member of the Apostolic Church of God, Bishop Brazier, when I was diagnosed, and they had a support group that I became a part of, and they shared so much information. And it's so important because when you're diagnosed, you go through a period of denial, and it was like, I don't want to sit there. I don't want to wear your T-shirts. I don't want to do this. But, you have the camaraderie of women who have gone through something that you have went through, and you get an opportunity to learn, and as well as reach out to other people. And not only that, but your bras, when you have to get prostheses, we have to get certain kinds of bras. I chose not to be reconstructed, so therefore I wear prostheses. And so therefore it's it's good. Women encourage one another.
Yes.
And the more you share with your pink sister or anyone, you have more people praying for you.
Amen.
So it's no good to keep it closed. And you had said something earlier that I wanted to add to, if it's okay. When you are diagnosed with breast cancer, and if you have a daughter especially, then your daughter should start getting mammograms at least 10 years younger than the age you were when you were diagnosed.
Okay, that's good to know.
So that will help your child,
that's good
and
to know.
That's very important.
Yes, thanks for sharing that.
Right.
So I want to thank both of you. I'm going to conclude with this. The Health and Wellness Ministry is going to have a Breast Cancer Solidarity Day. It will be on October 24th. We also will have something else going on. I'll talk about that at church. So we want you to join us on our Solidarity Day on October 24th during a church service where we're going to recognize our survivors and also the loved ones that have lost those family members that have lost loved ones. So I thank both of you for joining us. I think prevention is key, meaning that try to do the best that you can to become educated, be aware of what's going on. It is something that attacks both men and women as well. And the stats you gave for Illinois for men was shocking to me. So that really got me. So we want to make sure that everyone understands it's about men and women. So fear is real when it comes to big C. Big C cancer is real. But it's important that you know what it is that's going on with your body. So we want you to make sure you go to the doctor, get your exams, Do what you need to do. If you have been diagnosed, get your treatment. During the course of the treatment, manage your health care during the course of treatment. So we wish you all the best. We want to continue to pray for everyone, for anyone that is experiencing and going through the challenges of breast cancer right now. And we want to keep everyone in prayer, regardless of disease or not. We just want to continue to pray for one another. So we thank you for joining us today for another Health and Wellness Support Ministry podcast. And we look forward to other podcasts that are coming up for the month of October, domestic violence, and there will be a public service announcement for sudden cardiac arrest. Thank you very much. God bless.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Come get your victory.